It is, as I stop and think about everything we've done over the past few weeks and months to put together the General Assembly and looking at our agenda, there's a lot that we have to do. We are going to dig right in, and we have selected a pretty dynamic and awesome speaker for you today. So let me talk about him real quick. Dr. Kevin Snyder. He is a motivational speaker who has served as a university dean of students, has authored 4 books, and has traveled to audiences in all 50 states. He is also a former staff member abroad semester at sea, a certified skydiver, a scuba diver, a sailing enthusiast, and the winner of the game show The Price is Right. That's a lot, man. As a new student in college, Kevin was miserable and nearly dropped out several times during his freshman year. After making some important changes, he turned his life around. He got involved on campus and ultimately earned awards, including Homecoming King, Greek Man of the Year, and the Chancellor's Achievement Award. Kevin now speaks to college students across the country with the message of leadership and making the most out of your college experience. Kevin's program today, Be Greek, Be Proud, is a special presentation just for our fraternity, but also the fraternity and sorority community, and it will instill a sense of pride and privilege regarding your decision to join Lambda Chi Alpha. Prepare to laugh, be entertained, and challenged about one of the most important decisions you have ever made. Please welcome Dr. Kevin Snyder.
Good afternoon. How you feeling today? Anybody not feeling well? Raise your hand. I'll give you a hug. All right, get those jazz hands back out just for a second, guys. You know what they look like. They're also called spirit fingers, as ladies call them. If you're feeling good today, Lambda Chi, give me 2 claps. Oh, come on. One more time, twice as loud. Feeling good today, give me 2 claps. There we go. 1 clap. 1 clap. Half a clap. Seriously? All right. My name's Kevin Snyder. Privileged to be with you today. I'm from the East Coast, specifically Raleigh, North Carolina. Where are my North Carolina Lambda Chi's? Let me hear you. Yeah, good job. All right. Where are my East Coast Lambda Chi's? Okay, good. A little change of weather from what we're used to. Now, how many of you are sitting next to somebody that you do not know? Raise your hand. Good. Most of you are sitting next to somebody you do know. Unfortunately, this is a conference where part of the value that's going to come from this is going to be from you meeting people you would have never met otherwise. So what I want you to do, look to somebody that you don't know right now, make eye contact, and I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to share your name, where you're from, and something about your chapter that you want to brag about. Ready? Go. All right, 10 more seconds, 10 more seconds. All right, take your seat, take your seat. All right, if you can hear me, give me 2 claps. All right, good. My mom and my sister are both math educators. They say that works every time. Try it in your chapter meeting. Now, we are going to have a competition. How many of you tweet? Use Twitter, okay? As you know, this is your hashtag throughout the conference. 55th GA, encourage you to use it because it's going to be your opportunity to share with your circles back home, as well as you to share with people here what you're learning, what you're excited about. So, in the midst of this presentation, we're going to have a little competition. The top legitimate tweeter, it's got to be legitimate, and retweets don't count, but for the next few minutes that I'll be sharing with you, the number one tweeter, I'll provide a free keynote to your campus, whether it's during Greek Week, a new member orientation, a leadership banquet, what have you. I'm with Campus Speak, so that's a good value. The top tweeter, but it's got to be valid, and for those of you who are thinking, well, I don't tweet, you're out of luck, all right? So, but 55th GA, that's the hashtag, and if you want to copy me or Campus Speak, feel free to do that. So, you might be asking why I'm here. Now, in the spirit of transparency, I'm a member of Delta Tau Delta fraternity, okay? Don't boo. I'm a proud Greek, though, and that's what this is about. I'm a proud member of a fraternity, and this also applies to some of the women that we have here. I'm not in a sorority, obviously. But there are benefits that we receive of our affiliation. Yes or yes? Thank you. Trick question. And what I'm going to share with you today are two concepts. How many? Only two. We're going to keep this simple. That I believe can change not just your Greek experience, but also your life. Because it's changed mine. The reason I'm here today is because I joined my fraternity at UNC Wilmington. But the real reason I'm here, and I travel to campuses all over the country to share these two concepts about why we should be proud to be Greek. I go to campuses all the time, and I'm seeing and hearing of the frustrations that they have, the lack of engagement, the lack of community. And it's kind of disheartening because we do a lot for the community. Do we? Yes or yes? In fact, look at what you all do here. You raised almost 2.5 million pounds of food. That's right, give yourself 25 claps for that. Good. And you should. 2.5 billion pounds of food. Did you make a dent in the fight against hunger? Yes. Because you did what? You took action. I don't know of any other fraternity or sorority that can say this. This is something to be proud about. So when you get home, one of the things that you can talk about and make sure your members and your campus and your Greek advisor and your university knows is that Lambda Chi Alpha raised 2.5 million pounds of food. You made more than a dent. You made an impact. And that is what it's about to be a fraternity man. Is to be a better person, to make a difference, to make an impact. So we need to be proud about that, and there's no reason why we shouldn't share that. Now, as I was checking in today, I talked to your concierge. How many of you were given a bottle of water by the concierge named Valerie today? Raise your hand. Oh. Now, there might be somebody else there by the time we get done today. Valerie probably will be there. She'll probably be there tomorrow. But whoever it is, what I want you all to do is to thank that concierge for making your next 3 days a little bit more enjoyable. Because here's the thing. I asked Valerie today, I said, hey, are you ready for this amazing leadership conference? She looked at me, she kind of rolled her eyes. She goes, it's another fraternity group. I said, Valerie, why did you say that? What do you mean? She goes, well, we just had a group here 2 weeks ago. They were rowdy. Now, you should have some fun next 3 days, yes? Right? Is there a difference between that and rowdy? Is there a difference between that and inappropriate? Yes. I looked at Valerie, I said, Valerie, I'm not a member of this fraternity, but I guarantee you one thing. These are going to be gentlemen on their best behavior. How does that sound? I did say this to her. And she smiled and she goes, good. So, as part of that, I need your help to make Valerie feel special. So if you feel the mood, if you feel it, I encourage you to feel it. Just go at some point to her and say, hey, thanks. Can I have a bottle of water? But the point is, there's things that we should be proud about, right? There's also some things that we can work on as Greeks, right? How many of you come from a perfect chapter? Right? All right, okay. There's always something for us to work on. I'm a chapter advisor for Duke University, one of our best dealt chapters. They have something to work on. And many times other people are able to point that out much more than we'd like them to. So it's up to us to demonstrate why we're proud to be Greek, because it's not what you say, it is what you do. And that is what this program is going to be about for the next few minutes. And I hope to share some concepts with you that you can take back and apply, because the next 3 days here, guess what it is? It's called training. How many of you are a leader? Raise your hand. All right, look at the person next to you. If their hand's not up, check their pulse. I'm serious, check it. Because you know what leadership is about? One of the top things leadership is about is showing up. Every single one of you could be somewhere else right now, yes? Think about it. And regardless if you wanted to come to this General Assembly, or if you were feeling you had to, or told to, you're here. You still made a choice. You made a choice to come to some hot heat and to learn and to have some fun. Most of leadership isn't complicated. It is simply showing up. It is impossible to have an opportunity if you're not present to receive it. Because opportunities are never lost, they're just passed on to somebody else. So, look to your partner to the left or right, look at him, give him a high five and say, thanks for showing up. So much of leadership is simply showing up. Now, the two concepts I'm going to be talking to you about, number one, is quite simple. In fact, it was the Apple slogan that got them to where they are. It's to simply think different. To think different than you thought before you came here. To help other people think different about some challenges that you're facing back at your chapter in your Greek community. And simply changing to where it all begins, which is within our thoughts, is many times the key. Now, go back to when you were a new student at your campus. Think back there to that moment. Maybe you're driving to campus for orientation by yourself, or your mom and dad were taking you. Doesn't matter. Think back to that moment. How many of you actually said to yourself, I am going to join Lambda Chi Alpha when I go to college? Raise your hand, my yes people. Raise those hands high, please. In fact, why don't you people stand up for me? Stand up. Look around. Look around. Thank you, guys. You can sit. Now, how many of you, when you were going to your campus, you actually said to yourself, there is no way I'm going to join a fraternity? Raise your hand. Look around. A little bit more. And the rest of you kind of fit into what we call the maybe category. Maybe you thought about it, maybe you didn't. You know, maybe it was something on your mind you actually knew a little bit about, or maybe you didn't even know anything at all about what all those letters mean. See, that's what we find. There's three types of joiners. And this right here, this concept is about 20 years old from when I heard about it. Because when I was in my consultant training for my fraternity, they talked about this, and it's like, no, this really makes a lot of sense. You've got your yes joiners, the people who are going to join a fraternity anyway, or a sorority. You've got your no joiners, and then you've also got your maybe joiners. But what's interesting, and here's what I want you to really connect to, is this. Catch this. The majority of you in this room, by far, never thought you'd be sitting in this seat. So, for those of you who are recruitment chairmen, think about how this applies to you. We go after, many times during recruitment, and the campus culture that we have within the community of Greek, or our own chapter, is, well, let's just put on a good event during recruitment. Let's plan the best event. That's going to impact our recruitment the most. Are you kidding me? Is your recruitment about your events, or is it about you? your people. Because I guarantee you, every single one of you joined Lambda Chi Alpha because of a relationship. You met some of the brothers and you said, no, these guys are different. They're not what I thought Greek life was like. In fact, I was wrong. Lambda Chi Alpha, wow, this is one of the best chapters on this campus. So why are we not talking more about the reasons we actually joined? Because again, I'm going to say it one more time. Every single one of you joined for a relationship, and most of you joined by far, and you never thought that you would, yet we're all here. So how do we engage in that conversation? Right? So my own personal experience, I was a maybe joiner. Going to college, literally had a conversation with my mom and my dad, and my dad asked me, so you think you're going to go Greek when you get to campus? I had no clue what that even meant. And I said, well, what's that? He goes, well, are you going to join a fraternity? I said, Dad, I never even thought about that. Animal House? Right? I hate that. I hate that so much. But my dad said, no, a fraternity. Did you know I was in a fraternity? I had no clue. He goes, that's how your mom and I met. My mom and dad met at my mother's sorority formal. Her senior year, Tri Delta. Any Tri Deltas in the house? Okay. Glad to hear that. All right. Tri Delta. And I guess my dad couldn't get a date, so she took him. 9 months later, here I was. No, I'm kidding. It was a good formal. No. But I never knew that about my mom and my dad. I had a pretty good relationship with them growing up. I knew they met in college. I didn't know how they met. So automatically, I became kind of a maybe joiner. More on the side of I had no clue about it. But then I became a no joiner when I met my freshman roommate named Duncan. Anybody here named Duncan? All right, one guy. I apologize in advance, okay? This guy was brilliant and had the work ethic of a donut, okay? He decided to show up to college finally over a week into classes. And before he even started going to classes, you know what he did? He went to a recruitment event. They had recruitment the first week of school. He invited me to go with him, so I did. And the first couple groups we went to, we went to them all for the free food. So hey, be honest with you. But Duncan joined the fraternity that was the most popular. In fact, they had a party every night of recruitment. Now, for me to be honest with you, I didn't really drink a lot in high school. In fact, I didn't drink at all. Nothing against it, that wasn't the circle that I was with. I attended parties and stuff and this and that, but I wasn't the kind of drinking type. In fact, I hated the taste of it. But when Duncan joined this one particular group, I thought, okay, good for him. I'll get to get into parties for free, right? So fast forward about a month. Duncan was not allowed to talk to me once he joined that fraternity. Duncan, not only did he not ever go to class, but he get kicked out of school within the first semester. People started breaking into our room in the spirit of brotherhood to beat him up. I remember one more I looked over, he literally was duct taped to the bed. And he bragged about it, he thought it was fun. But what really got me about Duncan was when I saw one of the shirts that he was wearing. And it was their pledge shirt, their new member shirt, or their associate member shirt. And on the back of the shirt, it had the name of the fraternity with the crest and a logo for UPS. And it said this: we pack more box than UPS. I apologize to the women who just heard that. And I hope you are a little shocked that you're like, I would never put that on my shirt. But look at the shirts designs that we've created. And I'm right there with you. We had the best of shirt designs when I was president, and they're all with our fraternity name on a beer label. Looking back, it was one of the dumbest things I allowed. Back then it was cool, but I don't think my brain was quite formed at that point. But look about the values that we say. It's not what we say, it's what we do. It's how we express it. And then, after I saw Duncan wearing that shirt, then I heard him talk about the pledge competition that he had just won. And that was to see which pledge could sleep with the most women in 1 month. And again, I just thought, this isn't what I thought fraternity was about. And if either of those two things disgust you, the shirt or that competition, good, I hope. Because if they go on at UNCW like they did back then, I guarantee you they went on somewhere else. But here's the point. That quickly turned me into a no-joiner based on one person, based on one group. Is that fair? No. Think about it. All the great things that we do, and all it takes is one idiot to do something stupid. How many of you have an idiot in your chapter? All your hands should be up. Sorry. Every one of you has an idiot in your chapter. In fact, you probably have a couple. And that's okay, because what we're here to do this week, is to learn how to confront that. How do we confront that? How do we hold them accountable? Many of you have an honor board, completely de facto, doesn't even work. That's what that's partly there for. So I made an assumption about Greek life that was wrong, that all fraternities, in fact, that Greek life is the same way. And that wasn't fair to me, and that wasn't fair to Greek life. So fast forward a couple months. I'm at the gym, working on my fitness, right? Getting buff, thank you. And I'd worked out with some guys at the same time, in between classes. Got to know them fairly well, so I thought. And then one day, one of the guys that was in my group, his name was Davis, I see him walking in with this shirt that's got all these crazy letters on it. And it said Delta Tau Delta. Well, I asked him what it meant. He goes, Delta Tau Delta. I said, well, oh, you're in one of those. He said, no, we're a little different, and we're proud about it. Just so happened, 1 week later was recruitment, and he invited me to it. And I went to recruitment again, only because I knew one person whose name was Davis. So I'd already met him. That's the first step of recruitment. There's 5 steps. Many of you probably heard them. You meet them, then you do what? You make them a what? Make them a friend. Introduce them to who? Your friends. Then the fraternity. Then you ask them to join. Most of us go right for, oh, I met them. They got a pulse. All right, they seem kind of cool. Let's ask them to join. That's what most groups do. Not just land a kite. That's what we mostly do. And if we recruit 365, then we know if they're really a douchebag up front. We know their character. We know what they want. We know what they're about. So I'd already met Davis. I go to the recruitment event for some free food, meet some of his friends in the fraternity. I thought, these guys are pretty cool. Simply, that's all I thought. They're pretty cool. I didn't know about truth, courage, faith, power. I didn't know about the ritual. I didn't know about anything of that nature. And you know what? I didn't care. And I was sitting next to the president, didn't even know it, having dinner. And then when they started their awards program, he stood up. And I thought, I was just talking to the president the whole time. I thought that was pretty cool. And when he got up and spoke, he spoke about being the gentleman on campus. And if you were to join Delta Delta, that is what they expected. Then they talked about academics. They were the #1 GPA and had been within the top 3 since they had been started or founded. Then they talked about athletics. Then they talked about service. Then they talked about social. So I felt like, wow, these are some priorities in right. And you know what I did? The next day, in fact, the next couple days, I spoke to every woman I knew and asked them, what do you think about the Delts? So guys, who can be some of your best recruiters? The women. Ladies, is that true? Yes or yes? Yeah, I know some ladies that are just being quiet. They'll agree with you too. Why not go to the sororities and say, hey, who are some guys that you think are good guys? We want to talk to them. We want to at least meet them. One of the best tricks out there. It's not really a trick, it's a tactic that works. It's strategy. And offer them whoever provides the most names of people that actually join, we're going to donate a $500 scholarship to your charity. Who would not be excited about that? Dress up in your coat and tie, leave them with some flowers. Hey, pretty smart. So I found myself joining Delta Delta because I met one person who introduced me to their friends, who then introduced me to the fraternity, and I thought it was different. So I thought differently. That's the whole point with this. And it's time that we go out and we help other people think a little differently too, not by what we say, but what we do. It's how we help them think a little different. So look to your partner, look to somebody left or right, give them a high five and say, think different. So this is a pretty simple concept. We just need to think different, right? And so my Greek experience taught me, if I'm making assumptions about Greek life, what else am I making assumptions about that aren't right? Because you know what your assumptions are? They're wrong. Sometimes they might be slightly on track, but usually they are far wrong. And then it opened my eyes to what else have I made assumptions about in my life and in my college experience that are wrong. Because when I joined my fraternity, and when I went Greek, and that's the point, because it could have been Lambda Chi, it changed my life. It really did. Because when I was in high school, I didn't have the best experience. I had no clue on who I was as a person. I had done some stupid things. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but think about it. Have you ever done something stupid? Right? So my experience also taught me about leadership, how to think differently about leadership, and that making mistakes is actually okay. Because when I joined and I was initiated, they immediately asked me to take a position. I said, really? So soon? And I worked my butt off as the community service chairman. And then Ron Miller came to me at the end of that semester and goes, Snyder, we want you to be actually, the new member educator. I said, Ron, I'm a sophomore. You sure? He said, yeah. You show up. You do a good job. Fast forward another semester. Then he asked me, he goes, Snyder, some of the guys and I have been talking, we want you to run for president. I said, Ron, that's a lot, dude. He goes, you show up. See how this concept kind of comes in? He said, you're able to help people think a little differently about what they're about. And all of a sudden, I realized, wow, maybe I'm a leader. Maybe I've got that in me just a little bit, and the fraternity was able to bring that out. I still made some mistakes. If you look at the slide here, when we look at success, what does success really look like? I love this slide because it's so true. We think success is on the left side, that it's a straight arrow, that the only way to be successful is to do everything right. What a bunch of hogwash. What success really looks like is on the right side. All those little squiggly lines, right? And you know what those squiggly lines are? Trial and error, time, and probably making a lot of mistakes. But learning from those mistakes. Here's something to tweet. Mistakes are lessons of wisdom. If you learn something from it, you've never made a mistake because you're more wise. And the most successful people that I've studied in both my master's and doctorate work, I have never met someone who has not said at some point in some way, I am who I am because of all the mistakes I've made. Now, most of you probably know that. You've heard that. But it's so true. And I'm not encouraging just to go out and make mistakes. What I'm encouraging to do is go out and take risks, to go outside your comfort zone. Right now, today, tomorrow, the next day, when you get back, do something that you never would have done otherwise because you know it's important and it's part of the success process. Most of my high school, I felt like I was the squiggly lines. You're looking at a guy who battled depression almost my entire junior high career. I contemplated suicide on more than 10 occasions. And I've been arrested. I took something one time that did not belong to me. And I got caught. Now, you may have assumed that maybe I didn't make some of those mistakes. And this has nothing to do with me. This has everything to do with you. Because I am who I am today. In fact, I am on this stage because of the mistakes I've made in the past. And I've learned from them. I guarantee you, too, I've got an ex-girlfriend that still thinks I'm a complete jerk. But guess what that experience was? How not to be such a jerk in the future to somebody else. How to be a better father, a better spouse. If you ask yourself, what can I learn from that situation, even when you've made a mistake, even when you don't understand why it happened, you're more experienced and more wise because of that experience. It's only when we don't learn from something that we really have made a mistake. And you know what's going to happen? You're probably going to do it again. So that's how we hold other people accountable as well in our chapters, and just people that we know overall. It's helping them understand what is it about that experience that you can learn from. I took this picture yesterday. I flew into Vegas. I know it sounds crazy, but I figured I want to have a little bit of a drive. I'm staying here for a few days. And I wanted to go see Hoover Dam. I took this picture. What do you see in this picture? What are some things that you see? Raise your hand, I'll call on you. What do you see? Good, you went there right, boom, you got there real quick. The road I'm going and the road where I've been. Good. What else do you see in this picture? It's a pretty day outside, right? Right? Here's the point. Most people will say, well, I see a road, I see, it looks like a desert, I see a canyon, I see clouds. And then they finally get to the rearview mirror. Now, what does this rearview mirror represent in this picture? The past, where I've come from, right? What would happen if I drove my car from Vegas to here, the Biltmore, through a rearview mirror? I'd crash. I would not make it, right? Think about it. And this is a great analogy for you to kind of take in and say, wow, I need to share this with my chapter, or I need to share this with somebody else. But what do we do in life many times? We drive our life through a rearview mirror. We can't let go of the mistakes. We can't get over the do-over that we wish we could have in life. Well, guess what? One of the reasons I'm here today is to help you drop that baggage, because you know what that's doing? It's dropping you down. It is not allowing you to reach your full potential as a leader because you're holding on to it. So one way to let it go is to say, I got permission from a guy I don't know. And secondly, it's holding me back. As long as I've learned from it, I am that much more of an experienced and wise person, regardless of what mistakes that you've made or what's happened to you. And some of you are sitting here right now thinking, well, you don't know my life. Not to go like all Joel Osteen on you, you're right, I don't. So make it personal. Talk to me afterward. If any of you have been abused or know that you're abusive, that's a tough pill to swallow. But we got to start somewhere. We got to start somewhere. And so I share my personal experience with you just so that you know it can be tough. But we have to make a choice to drop it and move on, and even help other people drop it and move on, because success is really about learning from our mistakes and moving forward. Now, that's on a personal nature. So I got really excited about this concept of leadership when I joined the fraternity. And I thought, okay, I'm going to study this stuff. And I read books and books. I read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People 3 times. One year, the first year it came out by Stephen Covey. Second year, I went to Leadership Academy, and they had that as the book. And I thought, okay, I already read this. So I read it again. And you know what? I learned just as much the second time. And then when I became a consultant for the fraternity, I read it again, because they made us. And even the third time, I learned just as much as the first. So I got really absorbed into this concept of leadership. And that's where, again, everything I learned or thought, this was the same kind of concept around. And that's even when I decided to write a book called Think Differently, which, by the way, every single one of you are going to get today as an ebook. And if you want to get it, you simply text my name to 22828, and I will send you that link for free just to download it. And if you have a laptop, which all of you do, or an iPad, then guess what you also have? It's called an e-reader. You don't need to go out and buy a Kindle, because in that link, I'll give you the same software that you can install to allow to read a Kindle book. So I'll put this slide up at the end too, but just text my name, 22828, because in this book, I talk about some of these concepts. And there's some stories in there and activities even that I would love for you to take back and apply, because you know what I am right now? I become the ripple effect, and you're part of that ripple as well. I know you can't absorb everything I'm sharing right now. That's okay. You're going to be drinking through a fire hose for the next 3 days. Take a lot of notes. So I learned a lot just about leadership overall. Anybody know who this is? J.K. Rowling, okay, who wrote Harry Potter. Now, we might look at J.K. Rowling and say, wow, she was so successful. She wrote all these amazing books. But if you got to know her story, because we all have a story, you learn when she wrote Harry Potter, it was desperation. She was unemployed, single mom, on the equivalent of what the UK calls welfare. It's called benefits. See, if we didn't know that about her, we would assume she just had a lot of success and maybe had the straight arrow of success, right? The reality is she lived in the squiggly lines when she wrote one of the most popular books of all time. Chicken Soup for the Soul. You probably heard of that book. Probably have lots of copies at your parents' house collecting dust because there's so many of those books out now. But let's play a little Price is Right. How many publishers do you think Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen had to go to get Chicken Soup for the Soul, the first book ever published? Play a little Price is Right. Give me a number. 10, up. 2 dozen, 24, up. $1, seriously. 50 up, 150 down. 97 up. 110 up. 130 up, slightly close. 35 down. 32 up. Who said it? All right, stand up. What's your name? Jeff. Can you say, hey, Jeff? Hey, Jeff. Get a free book. Ready? 133 publishers. All right, watch your eyes. Nice. All right. 133 publishers to get a book made. Wow. They had something more than just thinking differently. They had a passion behind that as well. But every single publisher they went to, and they talk about this, and I write about it in the book too. Every single publisher they went to and they got to know, guess what they did? They learned from it. And they found out, why did this publisher say no? Again, there's a theme. Mistakes are lessons of wisdom. It's not about what you know, it's how hard you learn to work. And Chicken Soup for the Soul, like Harry Potter, became one of the most successful book series of all time. That is, until 50 Shades of Grey was written. So. And if you haven't read that book, don't. All right, so. Now, here are some other companies. Let's take this to a larger leadership level just for a moment as we hit hard this concept of to think differently. To think differently about failure. Failure good, failure not bad. Failure means you're doing something. These companies here, every single one of them now, we use as almost a verb. Google it. Friend that person on Facebook, right? Now, forget Napster, I should take that off. But every single one of these companies that has now changed our society at the startup phase was miserable success. Miserable failure. They weren't successful. In fact, they didn't have a lot of money. Some of these companies, the founders, all they had was grit. They didn't have a college education. But they had a vision, and they knew they needed to think differently to manifest what was a dream that they had. That is leadership. Saying, this is what I want, I'll figure out how to get it later. And then the strategy obviously needs to be there as well. But what is your vision? What are you going to think differently about? So I went to Hoover Dam. Driving from Vegas to here yesterday. Anybody been to Hoover Dam? All right, if you can take an extra day, change your flight, go there, all right? Don't go to Vegas, go to Hoover Dam, all right? Here's what's fascinating about this thing. This is a picture I took yesterday. This thing is a football field high and 2 football fields wide of concrete. One Hoover Dam is the same weight as 18 Empire State Buildings. And that is what, back in the Great Depression, was a vision for some engineers. People thought they were crazy. That cannot be done. They diverted the Colorado River to build this dam. People thought they were crazy, and Hoover Dam is one of the most amazing things that has shown us we can do anything that we set our mind to. We can do anything that we set our mind to. JFK, we're going to go to the moon. He had no clue how, but he knew he would. This electricity, I have no clue how this stuff works. I know it will if you flip a switch. How many of you are going to drive back to wherever you came from? Think about this. You're probably going to go at some point, it's going to get dark. You're not going to be able to see the whole highway. You're only going to be able to see every 200 feet in front of you because that's how far your headlights go. And what's most important is that those headlights work and you only see every 200 feet. Same thing with leadership. And I could drop about 20 other stories or metaphors for you, but the point is, get started toward your vision. You know, when I go speak at campuses, I ask the Greek communities, I like to meet with them before I speak to ask them, what are your goals as a council? What are your goals as a community? And you know what I mostly get? Well, we don't have any. Seriously. And I'm wondering, well, it's impossible to achieve a goal if you don't know what that goal is. Right? Think about it. How can you achieve a goal if you don't know what that goal is? Because people have told us we can't do it. Because we don't know how we're going to accomplish it, so we never start. To me, that just sounds silly. The greatest inventions ever created all started with an idea. And if Walt Disney could build a theme park off of a mouse concept, think about it. You can achieve anything that you set your mind to when you surround yourself by people who believe in you. And right now, if you're the most motivated, the most happy person in your circle of friends, you need to go find a new group of friends. It's okay. People come into our life for a season and for a reason. Check this video out. All right, I'm going to give you my best example. I'm going to kind of move on through some of the slides. The Spirit has been moving me to kind of stick in this concept. It's kind of kept me back a little bit too, so I'm going to move quick in the next couple slides if that's okay. Hope so. This is my favorite example of think differently. Roger Bannister. Anybody know who this is? All right, we got a couple. Thanks. 4-minute mile. He ran the 4-minute mile. The first person to ever do what people thought was impossible. Other runners, researchers, they even said it is impossible for a human body to run 1 mile quicker than 4 minutes. And then Roger Bannister did it in 1954. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you think since 1954 this record has been broken again? Yes or yes? Tons of times. Over 100. Has anybody ever told you that you can't do something? Has anybody ever said to you, well, we've tried it that way. And if they haven't yet, guess what? They will. So I want you to think of this example, because this is an example not a lot of people know about. Some audiences, nobody knows about it, which is why I'm sharing it. We know of many other mainstream examples, but this is a great example how one person with a mindset can even be around naysayers and still persist and still change history. Now, I'm not very passionate about running, but what's most important is you pursue what you're passionate about. There's some other examples of this. We see them on the screen. Lincoln, Martin Luther King, the Wright brothers, Steve Jobs, Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela. They've left legacies because they have thought differently. And if you go back and you study them, in the moment that they were creating some of their change, the societal push as a thought leader, every single one of these people were thought to be crazy. Now we look at them as legacies. In the moment, in the time, they were thought to be crazy, to be radical, because they challenged the status quo. Now, I'm not encouraging you just to go challenge the status quo. I'm encouraging you to have a vision for something that you know will be a positive impact for a change that needs to happen. Like some of you, you're coming from a chapter that has to challenge some traditions right now. You're coming from a Greek community that needs leadership right now. Maybe you're dating a girl, or you've got a friend that needs to develop a new mindset and just start changing some things, right? Let's not make the game complicated. It has to start with a vision and an idea. And here's the point. You are no different, and I'm not trying to be airy-fairy with you. I'm really not. You are no different than any of these folks that we've talked about. When you have a vision, when you know you need to think differently, and then when you're going to start taking some action toward that. Because I would absolutely love to know that maybe I planted a small seed in even one of you, that for the next 3 days, you know that when you leave here, it will happen. It ain't gonna happen overnight. It might not even happen this semester, but you know what? When it does happen, your chapter will still be around in 5 to 10 years because of that. If that sounds good, say yes. Because I came from a chapter 3 years after I left, it was suspended, almost shut down. And I thought, what a bunch of numbskulls. All that hard work of all those guys that I was with. Ugh. And leadership like that is very cyclical. So we have to think differently about that. Now, here's a brief example. This is something you can take back to your chapter. You might already know how to do it. Draw 9 dots. This will set the tone for a meeting, an exec retreat, an overall chapter retreat, anything. I do this with CEOs and other groups that are professionals. Most of them don't know how to do this. You simply draw 9 dots, and you ask people to connect all 9 dots with 4 straight lines, keeping your hand on the paper. That's it. Pretty easy directions. I've got this on my website. You can download it if you want. It's pretty simple. So I'm going to ask you to do that right now. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds tops. Connect all 9 dots with 4 straight lines, keeping your hand on the screen. Ready? Go. Anybody get it? Raise your hand. All right, have you done this before? Yep, okay, good. We have to think differently. In this case, we simply have to think outside the box. Look at how we do this. It's pretty easy, right? Let me show you. Look at the left screen. 1, 2, 3, 4. See that? Keeping your hand on the paper or on the screen. 1, 2, 3, 4. So to achieve the goal, here's how you process this if you were to do this activity. To achieve a goal, we had to do what? Think outside the box. No, you had to think differently. And then you set up the conversation. Well, what do we need to think differently? Because that's the only way we're going to achieve our goal. How do we think differently about you fill in the blank? Because what you're also doing is going outside your comfort zone. And if you've ever been skydiving, for example, you jump out of a perfectly good plane, you land, and I've never met someone who's landed and being scared as heck when they jump, but when they land, they wanted to do what? What do you think? Do it again. So they felt the fear and they did it anyway. See, so many analogies of life are pretty simple. You feel the fear and you do it anyway. You face the fact that you're going to be a little uncomfortable, challenging that concept, or maybe having a discussion with some of your fellow chapter leaders about what needs to change. And you start the conversation like this. I need to talk with you about something that's important to me that could affect the future of our chapter. Is that okay? And then you be very specific about an example, and then you share the benefit of what the idea is or the concept that you might have. I'm sure that's a session here. Basically, they should title it How to Confront the Idiot in your chapter, right? Or the person who is pushing something that, it's a challenge. So I'm going to flip through a couple of these slides right here. That would have been a fun activity, actually. Actually, be glad that I didn't do that with you, because 2 people here who were going to volunteer would have looked very interesting. So, look at your partner left to right, give them a high five, and say, think differently. Everybody. All right, good. Is that something that we can do you think? 73% of the average person's thoughts are negative. It can be tough, but we got to start somewhere. So the next concept, the second concept that I'm going to share with you is the most important. And to be transparent, it is tough in a room of guys because we talk about leadership, but you know what the source of leadership is? It's this. It's called passion. Knowing what you're willing to do that might be crazy to some other people. Most people, they'll go through a whole life in a job that they don't like, not even sure what they're passionate about, what makes them feel alive, what gives them that enthusiasm, that energy. And this is the concept that can inspire people around you just by having enthusiasm. Because when you are inspired, you become inspiring. Let me give you an example. When I was chapter president, I had to get a risk management director. I had to fill that role. And it was the only role that I had trouble filling. And so we got a guy named Brent to fill that role. Brent had no interest in being a director of risk management at all. In fact, he was a fifth-year senior. But we got Brent to fill the role because we needed to fill the role. Sound familiar? Now, do you think Brent did a good job as director of risk management for our chapter? No or no? No, Brent, because he was put in a position he didn't care about, I was in the Greek advisor's office 3 times that semester. And then finally, the next semester, when we kind of did a restructuring of our exec board, I found somebody else to go in that role who actually cared. And I had to be a much better talent scout to match people's interests with a position. So for those of you, you know right now, hey, I've got somebody in a position that should not be in that role. You know that they don't like it. It's okay, just have that conversation. Ask them what role they'd like to be in. Hell, create a role for them. Because if you match somebody in a role that they don't care about, or if you're in a role that you don't care about, oh, shocker, I went there. It is up to you to make a change. And if you can do that now, guess what? You'll learn how to do it, even when it feels uncomfortable, and you'll be that better as a leader in the workforce when you're working in a company or owning the company. This is called practice. Why not give it a shot? Because it will work. But passion, here's the thing about passion. It's tough. Some of you might be thinking, I have no clue what I'm passionate about. Here's a question, or a couple questions I would pose to you then to think about how to find or begin some of the, because it's not just going to come to you by answering these questions. What are you good at? And how'd you get good at it? Because you got good at it because you practiced. Because you wanted to practice. If people knew how hard I've worked to be a motivational speaker, it wouldn't seem so glorious after all. Because my worst presentations were my first presentations. And now what I hope, I've learned at least some abilities and techniques to make an hour keynote a little bit more enjoyable. But what are you good at? How'd you get good at it? And second question, and I'll stop at the second. There's about 20. But number 2 would be, what is it that when you do it, time simply seems to stop? Start answering those 2 questions. You'll be an effective leader that can help people, also other people, find their passion. I love this quote by Zig Ziglar. When you have passion, you'll find a way to make it happen. That's why passion is important. It's the fuel in a car that will never go away. Check out this quick video.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing, and it's totally true. And the reason is because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, if you're not having fun doing it, you don't really love it, you're going to give up. And that's what happens to most people, actually. If you really look at the ones that ended up being successful, unquote, in the eyes of society, and the ones that didn't, oftentimes it's the ones that are successful loved what they did so they could persevere when it got really tough. And the ones that didn't love it quit because they're sane, right? Who would want to put up with this stuff if you don't love it? So it's a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of worrying constantly. And if you don't love it, you're going to fail. So you got to love it. You got to have passion.
So what's your passion? And why not integrate that, apply that to your leadership? I was never asked what my passion was at any leadership conference through my 4 years of college. It's as if it didn't matter. I studied marine biology. Graduated with a marine biology degree. I like marine biology. What am I doing now, right? 80%, in the past at least, 80% of people 10 years later after they graduate are doing nothing in the field of what they got a degree in. And I'm not encouraging anyone to change your major because your advisor will hate me when you get back. Your parents will hate me too. But be thinking about, what is it that I'm passionate about? Let that be your career. And as crazy as it might sound, good. If nobody said your passion doesn't make any sense, maybe you've not thought big enough about it. So let me give you a story about this. Anybody here heard of the show Price is Right? All right, a few of you. Okay. Now, will anybody here admit that you've actually yelled at the television when somebody makes a silly bid? Right. If your hand didn't go up, you're lying. I had a vision when I was a young kid. I was 12 years old. I told my mom one day while we were having lunch, I said, we're watching The Price is Right. I just beat her on the Showcase Showdown. And I said, Mom, I'm going to meet Bob Barker one day. Right. Bob Barker, not Drew Carey. The living legend. And my mom looked at me, she goes, that's your dream? But that vision was set in stone at 12 years old. And it made no sense. It did not make sense, I'll admit it. But I set a goal and a vision for what I knew would happen without having a clue how. So when my mom and I were at the grocery store, she's shopping for groceries, I'm studying grocery prices. And a 12-year-old should not know the price of Dexatrim, Preparation H, or Metamucil. All right? $6.99, but still. I go to college, I write a paper on The Price is Right, English 101, Dr. Levon Adams. I get the paper back a week later. The grade that I got was see me after class. I go see Dr. Adams after class. She goes, Kevin, hold up the paper. She says, this is one of the best papers I've ever read with this assignment. But you need help. You're obsessed with this show. And then she gave me the number for the counseling center. Then I go to a leadership conference the summer before my senior year, very similar to General Assembly. Not knowing in the world still how I would ever get to The Price is Right, yet I had arranged my entire class schedule in college around the show. I meet this guy named Chris in the registration line. And at the first session that we went to, Chris and I, we immediately connected. At the first session that he and I went to, though, we had to get up and do an icebreaker. And the icebreaker was, say something unique about yourself that nobody else would know unless you told him. So Chris gets up, he sits on a chair, he says, hey, my name's Chris from the University of California at San Diego. Most people would not know. I was just on The Price is Right, and I won a gazebo. Oh my God. I was like, shut the front door. And then Chris shared with me how to get on The Price is Right. Because as you're waiting in line, they screen the audience. They know who they're picking prior to the show starting. So with that new knowledge, because I had no clue how to get on, I said, Chris, I'm in North Carolina. He goes, take a road trip. I thought, that's cool. So I look at the dates when I could take a road trip, because he was getting the whole fraternity together, all wear the same shirt, they were going to plug me, and that's how I would live the dream. That's what they did for him. The same date is the only available taping date for The Price is Right available. The only date was on the same date as my college graduation. So I had to make a change, or I had to make a choice. College graduation, Price is Right. The only difficulty in that choice was in calling mom and dad to say what the decision was. And then I skipped my college graduation, drove across the country, Interstate 40, and we show up the morning of the show taping, 3551 Beverly Boulevard, and see the sign, show canceled. Yeah, what? If I didn't say what, I said, yeah. And I fell to the ground, and I cried. And then I got escorted off property. And as I was driving home, here's the point. Because some of you are thinking, this guy's weird. I was passionate. Healthy obsession. And as I was driving home, the thoughts that kept coming to my mind were this. Am I going to give up? Am I going to give up? And it did not even occur to me that yes would be the answer to that. So when I pull in the driveway back home, I give my mom a really nice big hug, and I go immediately to the computer, look at the next show taping date for 6 months later, and I commit to it. I buy a plane ticket, and I had to wait. I'm not a person who likes to wait, but I had to. 6 months later, I fly into LAX airport. Chris picks me up. We immediately go to the studio parking lot to make sure it was open, and it was. In fact, if you think I'm weird, there's people in front of me. Only 2, but still. And that next morning, as hundreds of people plow behind us, we finally were walking into the studio audience. Rod Roddy came out, the announcer at the time. They started playing some music. And then this.
Spend your money wisely.
Thank you. You're going to look Price is Right different now, I think. But here is what was in the paper when I got home. Snyder lives dream on Price is Right. And it hit me when I saw this headline, because up until this moment, awesome goal achieved, right? Like, I felt so great. I remember sending that email, and I was like, I did it. But when I saw this headline, I realized what I actually did. I lived a dream. This program has nothing to do with me, everything to do with you. What's your dream? What's your Price is Right? And if nobody's ever looked at you and said, that dream sounds crazy, then your dream is not big enough. If you know exactly how you're going to do something, that goal isn't big enough, because a lot of what achieving greatness and extraordinary leadership is about is not knowing exactly how, but it's knowing that you will. So tweet this: you can't live a dream unless you have one. This is the vision I had at 12 years old. My own mom thought I was a little weird. Now, I'm going to share with you one other vision before I get off the stage here, because I like to be transparent, and I also like to be very intentional. You can hold me accountable. This is the other dream I'm still working on, all right? 37, I'm single, never married, no kids. People look at me like I got a problem. I'm like, no, I got high expectations. Come on. But what's your dream? What's your Price is Right? That's really what this is all about. It's impossible to live a dream unless you have one. So, the next few days of this conference, your CEO set off really, really well. There's a lot of things that are going to happen. You're going to learn a lot. Make sure you talk to some people about what they really do with their chapter. Share some ideas. But also leave here with at least something, that one big idea. And I hope you have 5, but focus and chase one squirrel at a time. Have one goal, one vision. You maybe don't know how it's going to happen, but you know that it will. And if that sounds cool, say yes. Cool. Now, on Twitter, social media, everything is Kevin C. Snyder for me. I would love to stay in touch. I really mean that. I return every email, if it's a cool tweet, I usually retweet it. Just make sure you spell my name right. Snyder like the pretzel. There's a guy in Georgia who hates me, okay? And then also, to get the free book, just text 22828 with my name. And that is all I've got time for. Did you have a good time? Awesome. Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of campuses when I was a consultant, like a leadership consultant like you have, there were a lot of campuses I went to where delts maybe weren't so good and Lambda Chi's were awesome, and sometimes I wondered. So I'm just saying. All right? I'll stick around throughout the day. Would love to meet some of you guys. So come by on, give him a warm welcome. Come on down.